You'd think we should be able to relax after Omicron peaks. Soon, well over 90% of Australians above the age of 12 will be vaccinated. Many will have had boosters. Kids are being immunised. And it's estimated that millions of us will have been infected with Omicron. Professor Eddie Holmes helped to map the coronavirus genome and probably knows as much about the evolution of the virus as anyone on the planet.
The critical thing now is that we're in a period where we are getting these new variants come on a fairly regular basis. And so far, what's been very obvious is that these variants have come often from places with very poor vaccination levels.
At the moment, in those lower-income countries, we've got a capacity to have delivered about 200 million doses of vaccine a month. But of course, that's variable across individual countries. We need to actually have about 300 million doses a month administered if we're to hit that 70% target of people vaccinated.
And some of the lowest levels of COVID immunisation are in Africa, where Omicron was first detected. There are African countries with as few as 1% of their population vaccinated, when the World Health Organization target is 70%.
There are several factors that account for this low coverage of vaccination in Africa. First of all, Africa do not produce vaccines. That is just clear that as a continent, only 1% of the vaccines that they need are produced on the continent. So it tends to import 99% of vaccines. Second is that the mechanism that were set up, put in place, was challenged in terms of delivering vaccines in a timely fashion when the vaccines were available, essentially because vaccines that were available were actually bought by the more developed countries.
The result of the low vaccination rate is that populations where the coronavirus is circulating freely and mutating gives rise to variants. There are quite a few misconceptions about the evolution of the coronavirus. The first myth is that one variant leads to the next, when in fact it's not a direct process.
Omicron, we know, did not come from Delta. So if you do an evolution, like a family tree, an evolutionary tree, they are separate. And similarly, Delta did not come from Alpha, okay? So it's not a simple progression at all.
That matters because you can't predict the next variant from Omicron. We can still be surprised in the months ahead. So the next variant can pop up anywhere, which leads to the second misconception, which is that variants become less virulent or milder as time goes by.
Omicron certainly appears to be less virulent than Delta, but it also appears to be perhaps worse than the original Wuhan strain. What evolutionary theory tells us is that virulence, how severe the disease is, is a very complicated characteristic. It could in time go down, could stay the same, or it could go up.
And that brings us to the third and potentially most dangerous misconception of all, because it could lull us into a false sense of security. It revolves around the notion of living with COVID.
The frequent but not the inevitable course of a virus is that they become more infectious but less severe, and that's clearly what's happened with the Omicron variant. Now, we'll move on all the advice we have from being a pandemic to what's called an endemic disease, where it becomes a less severe but embedded condition in the same way that the flu has.
The word endemic is much misunderstood. Many believe that when the coronavirus becomes endemic, we can relax, but that's not necessarily so.
When people talk about endemic, what I think I mean is that the transmission is somewhere globally. It's always there. It may not be in any country at any one time, but globally it's there. That does not mean that, very importantly, the virus is mild or harmless at that time.
For the next variant to dominate, it will have to be more contagious than Omicron, which means it will probably be better able to evade previous immunity. But it's impossible to predict its severity, its virulence.
I think it is in all of our interest, and that this is an important point I want to make, that we strive to vaccinate at speed and at scale across the world, so that we should restrict the ability for the virus to transmit. The common goal for all of us should be to vaccinate quickly so that we create a barrier for the virus to circulate across the world.
One of the questions I keep on being asked is when and how will this end? Well, we can't even begin to think about that until the world is vaccinated and the virus slowed down.
Australia needs to step up along with every other high-income country and every other country that actually has capacity in this area in order to actually get those vaccination targets realised by the middle, we hope, of this year, so we can bring down the risk of more variants and bring this pandemic to a close.
We work collectively to scale up testing. We work collectively to scale up vaccination and, of course, the treatment programs. If we do those three things, then we have the right to be optimistic that we'll begin to turn the corner in 2022. We will not eradicate the virus in 2022, but we can truly turn a corner in 2022.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.